right. Well, yesterday we were talking about how your e-bike and electronics purchases and tons of other random small purchases besides consumables probably going to spike in price over the next few months as 104% reciprocal tariffs were announced. And today they went up even further, except they paused tariffs in most countries for 90 days, except for in China. In fact, the tariff amount in China is actually going up to 125%. I don't even, what do you even say about this? It's a full-on trade war we are currently in the middle of, it seems like, and no one is backing down. Absolutely nobody is showing any side of seceding whatsoever. Things are not yet getting more expensive. I think everyone has probably noticed that. If you're keeping your eye on a purchase that you have planned currently, whether it be an e-bike, electronics, TV, laptop, computer, PS5, something like that, you're probably still seeing the same price. Realistically, we may not see any increase in price if these actually remain in effect for like the next few months. But as of right now, they're going even higher. It may seem like to this point, it's just kind of like imaginary numbers that are just getting tossed back and forth with each other. I think these are going to start coming to fruition immediately. So yesterday's video, I mentioned that when I do imports on certain things, I have DDP in my terms. And there's still people in my comments arguing, saying, no, you don't understand. When it gets to the port, that's when you're going to have to pay the fee. You don't, just maybe you're not familiar with this. I actually am familiar with it. If you look up DDP, that is precisely what it guards you against when you are the buyer buying something that's imported. The seller covers all the costs, everything. This is for all the people in that video that said, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's been like this for a while. Tariffs are not new. For those who don't, regularly import stuff, which is most people, unless you're running like a business, in which case you probably do. I already know what I'm talking about. There have been tariffs on imports from China for a long time, significant ones, in fact. But the thing is that most people don't realize the margins that Chinese sellers have are the profit margins are big. Like they make a lot of money on importing stuff. That's kind of where the whole thing is premised upon. Same thing like if you sell cars, if you know anyone who sells cars, there's the MSRP, but the dealership is not buying the car for even close to what the MSRP is from the manufacturer. There's like a significant gap in the price to allow for a profit margin to exist. Same thing with this. So, I will quickly sum this up. I'm just kind of recapping what's going on in the last 24 hours because it seems like this is changing so much every day. If these stick, we will start seeing just random companies dropping like flies, but like small drop shipper-esque companies. I think this is already taking hold in some of the smaller e-commerce circles. A lot of like bootstrap startups that maybe do like $1 million in revenue a year are quickly realizing that they are going to have their revenue cut in half, potentially, I pay a lot of attention to random e-commerce stuff because I just find it interesting. And here's another one. Amazon reconsiders its strategy in the US with Amazon Haul due to tariffs. Now, if you've never heard of Amazon Haul, it's basically like a subsidiary of Amazon that allows you to get stuff for even cheaper than you find on Amazon. If you've ever shopped on Amazon in the last year, you realize a lot of it is like the same Temu or AliExpress crap just sold on Amazon with 1-day shipping as opposed to like 1 or 2 weeks. And with a 300% price increase, sometimes even more egregious than that. Sometimes like 1,000% more expensive than you could find it on one of those websites. Amazon Haul was kind of created to battle that, right? So go on here. It literally looks like Temu, right? It's just like a bunch of random crap. It's still marked up ridiculously, but like you have this thing, which is like what is that? A hair bonnet for $3. It's probably it was like 5 cents to manufacture, probably, right? So margin's still extremely high. But all this stuff, everything you see right here, I would wager that almost every single thing that we're looking at on this page, manufactured in China, imported in a cargo crate, and sold on Amazon Haul via Amazon Fulfillment Center so that they can ship it to you within a day or two. Anyways, long story short, they are being affected. So the tariffs are going to come from the top down, right? They're going to, the strategy of how to deal with the tariffs are probably going to be dealt with by the big companies and then trickle down to everybody else who has to deal with them in some way or another. Now, something I want to circle back to is the fact that even though the tariffs are 125%, that obviously is not going to correlate to a 125% increase on the price of a thing that you're planning on buying, right? There's just no way that would be sustainable in any realistic sense. Like say a PlayStation, the PlayStation 5 Pro, the new one is like $700, right? It's not just going to become $1,500 overnight, but it could become $1,000. That's still a really significant jump. It could become 50% more expensive. It could be anywhere between 30 to 60% more expensive, which is still a lot. And that could really spread onto everything. It could spread into anything. This screenshot went viral the other day. Somebody ordered $560 worth of stuff from Fabletics, which is like a athletic wear company. And there was an almost 10% tariff surcharge, which is basically just another tax. So it's like a tax on top of tax. If you live in California, you're already paying really high sales tax on stuff. Me in LA County is where I live in. I live in the county of LA. Sales tax on most stuff is between 9 and 10%. So you're basically looking at an additional 10% on everything. anyone who decides to pass on the full amount of the surcharge to the consumer. And even here, I don't believe that this would be the full amount of the tariff surcharge they're passing on. They probably have some method to spread it out as evenly as possible amongst like all their expenses, to where it's not just like an extra 30 or 40%, which is realistically what they could be paying, especially for apparel. Apparel stuff like that is like primarily what is going to be affected. Stuff that was like able to be sold at a very huge margin. Just the margin is just shrinking, right? It's shrinking. So what is any company going to do in order to maintain that big profit margin? They're going to charge you more. And that's precisely what we're seeing here. It looks like this is something that they're being totally transparent about. Whether or not you agree with this, them just plainly advertising the fact that the tariff surcharge is going to be a thing from now on until, I guess maybe this blows over, or maybe it won't. Who knows how it's actually going to pan out. Obviously, a lot of people state that the goal of this is to bring manufacturing to the USA. Whether or not that happens is going to be something that remains to be seen for a while. But the effects are going to be felt pretty soon, probably within the next month or two, and more immediately than that on smaller things like this, like ordering clothes. I mean, I don't know if you really need to buy $500 worth of athletic gear, but if you do, you can expect an extra 10% charge on it for now. What's this? China every time to respond to a Trump tariff.
I don't give a rat's ass. Hit them motherfuckers. Do it. I said hit them motherfuckers. Hit them motherfuckers. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I ain't trusting that shit. I ain't trusting a goddamn.
Oh man, Granny used to shoot craps in the alley with the bros, hitting snake eyes, taking motherfucker. He was taking everybody's money.
Not the goddamn. It's going down in the ditch.
Oh man. Okay, well, yeah. So I mean, this is just it's gonna keep on scaling. I don't talk too much about like investments and stuff, but of course, the S&P 500 skyrocketed today after they announced the 90-day pause, even though they increased tariffs on China. Things skyrocketed, and most people are green on their portfolios from the last week, even though it's still down pretty significantly. If you take a look today, it's pretty much at the level it was in September of last year. So, I mean, not terrible, but it's rebounding in some sense. I mean, clearly there are going to be positive effects of them announcing pauses on tariffs from a lot of places, but China, the main one, increases. Still not good news. China applying so much pressure, every other tariff got paused. Tweet from Donald Trump straight from his Truth Social. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the United States to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the U.S., including the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, and that these countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. So that explains the stock rally of this morning, but it's like no one can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen later today before market close. It's like all this seems to happen during market hours, right? From like 6 a.m. Eastern time or whatever they open to like 3 p.m. Pacific time. It's after that, everyone kind of chills out till the next day, and then you wake up and it's like everything's different again. So no one really knows to expect. One thing I will predict, though, is I feel like some companies are going to start, even if they're not really actually feeling the effects of tariffs on like the inventory they have to purchase to resell to consumers, they're just going to start charging more for stuff anyway. Let me know if you guys have seen any examples of that. People just charging more, companies just charging more for things that it's just like oh, we got tariffs. Maybe they're not actually dealing with them, but it's just kind of like a blanket excuse for everyone to kind of raise prices. If inflation wasn't enough, people can just start bumping prices up on things slowly. On really competitive things, like I always come back to e-bikes, obviously, because that's what I know best, and that's what I have firsthand knowledge of dealing with when it comes to purchasing in some type of volume. I probably won't change that much because there's always going to be a competitor to snake and undercut who is not feeling the effects and is not as greedy. So, I don't know. But in some other areas, it probably could. If you have less competitors, who's stopping you from just bumping your prices up 20, 30% right now and be like, hey, it's out of our hands, folks. Sorry, tariffs. I mean, there's not much we could do. We got to pass it on. Someone's got to pay it. Guess what? It's going to be you. I could totally see that happening soon. All right, this is actually kind of wild. Trump's great time to buy claim hours before tariff pause raises insider trading concerns. So apparently he went on his Truth Social and posted, "This is a great time to buy DJT." President Trump's post insisting it would be a great time to buy shared hours before announcing a tariff pause has sparked concerns of possible insider trading. Oh my God. I mean, if he announced it to everybody, is it that inside? It's almost like you have to follow him on his... Oh my, okay, so this is why this is kind of crazy. It's like you have to at least have Twitter because everyone immediately posts anything you see him post on there, on the Twitter. But it's like you do, I guess you could argue that there's some level of insider if you have that app and you follow him on it. I guess you get the first, the first notice to be a good time to buy. So he literally posted that it would be a good time to buy before things pump 10%. That's I can't lie, that's kind of crazy. That's actually kind of insane. So that's a thing that happened. I did not even know that. I didn't know that. I checked my stuff this morning. Yeah, I checked my Roth IRA, my traditional IRA, and my individual portfolio. I was like, everything's green. This is great. I was on my walk. So I didn't even really care. I just was like, oh, something must have happened. I try to not check the news in the morning. I just try to disconnect from it completely. And then later on in the day, I try to catch up. Otherwise, I just sit and I obsess over my investment portfolios, and it's just not good. It's not healthy. Yeah, this is for top comment. It's market manipulation, plain and simple. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. They couldn't even get this guy on insurrection. You think they're going to get him on SEC violations? Yeah, I mean... I don't know. Two more things. Breaking. China strikes back on U.S. tariffs. China will impose 84% tariffs on U.S. goods from Thursday. That means things going to China from the U.S., which is, I mean, I don't really even know what these things would be. I don't even pretend to even have any knowledge on what things are imported into China. Maybe someone in the comments could chime in and let us know. But they are up 50%, 84% tariffs on U.S. goods from Thursday, up from the 34% previously announced, the finance ministry said on Wednesday. I mean, it's a trade war, plain and simple. Everyone's paying more for the same stuff we were paying for in January. And by we, I don't mean us consumers, but someone's paying for it currently. At the dock, somebody is paying for the stuff. So it is more expensive. Where we are going to see the cost is still kind of remains to be seen, honestly, from what I can tell. By the way, I just want to say I'm not like I don't know anything about economics. I just use common sense. It's just like, I think most of this stuff anyone reads and understands the same way I do. I just am making it into videos. I don't pretend to be a finance, literary genius or anything. I just live extremely frugally, save all my money, and try not to buy anything in the first place. So I get to watch a lot of this on the sidelines and really, just give my 2 cents. And that's about it. Lastly, China orders its banks to reduce U.S. dollar purchases. So that means like currency exchange. China's central bank will not allow sharp yuan declines and has asked major state-owned banks to reduce U.S. dollar purchases. People with direct knowledge of the matter said on Wednesday. There goes the infinite money hack. The federal budget depends on how long before the entire government collapses due to a total lack of funds. That could be a realistic outcome, but obviously China doesn't want to devalue its own currency, so it's not going to continually just accept just getting battered in a full-blown trade war. So on one hand, it makes sense. It doesn't just stop at tariffs. They're going to do a multitude of other things to prevent their own inflation from skyrocketing, is what I'm taking from this, at least. I'm not entirely sure of what the consequences of this would be. But I mean, essentially, it's like if they keep buying U.S. money, then their own money is not as valuable and the U.S. money is more valuable. I think that's basically how it works. Again, not an expert, but with all this stuff said, what can you do as a person who probably doesn't really care about any of this stuff? You just hear in the news and you're like, oh, this probably is not good. Or maybe it is, or maybe you just don't care. The one thing that I would advise is if you had like a big purchase of something that is probably made in China and it is like an e-bike or like a computer or like an iPhone, like a TV. I don't ever advise anyone panic buy anything, but if you had the purchase in mind, it's probably a pretty good time to buy it, And if you are not going to buy anything, then I would continue doing that. I would continue not buying things because that's always a good habit. I barely buy anything. The only thing I'm keeping an eye out for is when I import e-bikes. And I am just now starting to see some potential effects of this. It seemed like, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be 100% transparent here. The vendors I've been speaking with have not cared about any of this at all. That's how big their margins are. They really have not really cared one bit up until today. Today, right now in the afternoon time is when I'm filming this, is like barely early in the morning for them. They're waking up and now they're starting to become a little bit more, hesitant upon giving me upfront pricing for certain things. And, it seems like there's probably a little bit more uncertainty in the air is how I'd put it. So, that's my 2 cents is if you had something that you had planned to purchase in the next month or two and it's an expensive thing and you predict that it might become more expensive, I mean, it's very likely that it will be. And it depends on if you're willing to pay more for that same thing in a few months, if that is the case, or if you just don't care. I find that with most purchases, if you just stop caring about the thing, like if you just stop thinking about buying something, you probably don't want it and you'll probably just not end up buying it. If it's an essential, yeah, some essentials may go up in price, like toilet paper or something, things like that, kind of unavoidable. But as far as entertainment purchases or hobby purchases, things like that, if you want to buy it, maybe buy it now. If you don't, if you're not ready to buy it, it's going to be more expensive. Think about it. Maybe you don't need it that much. But yeah, things are evolving. I guess tomorrow we'll tune back in and we'll have a completely different story to tell. And I don't know. I guess we'll see.